like visually it's very nice. I think like if we could give, again, like I just think this is a gift that we give families, like they're giving us so much of themselves, and so we want to kind of put that together where it's more than just like those black and white letters on a white piece of paper. You know, so anything we can do to kind of make it seem more exciting to them, and kind of really honor where they're from and, you know, where they've been is wonderful. But that's my,
Even
that's my
activity that we did here with the circle, and I think that's been very helpful as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Any other ideas that people have started missed, or should we get out there into the universe?
So we just wanted to wrap up with what are the obstacles, what are the barriers to doing a strength-based culture discovery? And I know over here there was one raised. Do you want to share?
Well, the concern that I had is the number of families that you have and the time it takes to put into all of that. A lot of families, when they provide that information, is very intimate to them, and sometimes they don't want to share it, but yet they'll tell you. So sometimes it's been said that you can have a couple of strengths, needs, and discoveries, one to pass out and one to keep. But when do you have the time to do that? And the other piece with writing those, for me, is that was part of the criteria for getting the job, is having someone that you relate to, you work with, you live with. So a lot of times when I draw some information from them, I share with them some of the things that I'm familiar with them. For instance, I had a mother that she liked making foreign foods, and I was familiar with some of the foods that she made. So right away she felt a relationship with sharing and her culture in that way. So sometimes it's when you can relate to what they have, but again, back to the time frame about having more than one strengths, needs, and discoveries.
Okay, so we have a couple different concerns with the tool. One is to really get at the depth of culture. It takes a lot of time, like we talked about in the beginning. The person that you know that you're not related to took time to develop that understanding. So some of the strategies that people came up with, good job y'all, that can help maybe catalyst some of this understanding about the family, but it still takes time. And then now you have all this richness of information and understanding and stories. All of that writing takes time. And how many families are you trying to understand in that depth at any given time? Could be a little bit too overwhelming for any one person. So some of the feedback that I had, just so you know what I said when we talked over at the table, was that perhaps we would change our practice so that you wouldn't be working with as many families at a given time. You'd be spending more time with a family, and the time that it takes to write the document is, we're all concerned about productivity. It's all appropriate in terms of productivity. So the visits, the conversations, and the writing is all billable. So your productivity could be hit with working at this depth with a less number of families. And to use extremes, if I had 100 families, I'm a family partner for 100 families, I could call all 100 families once in a week, and I'd have a unit for phone call and a unit for documenting the note, and I'd hit 200 units that week. That's pretty good productivity. Those families wouldn't know who I was, and I wouldn't know who they were. And what are we really trying to do in Raptown and with the Strength Needs Culture Discovery? So that's the argument that I would use for lower numbers of families that you're working with, but understanding them in much deeper ways. And I know you had a...
I was going to say in a different way, the time frame and the turnaround in terms of receiving consent and completing a document. I don't know what people's ranges are, but that can be a challenge.
So the challenge is creating the Strength Needs Culture Discovery documents under the time frames your CSA has given you to do that. So at the home, we don't have like 10 calendar days, like with comprehensive assessment, but it's got to be before the first CPT meeting. So it's kind of a looser time frame, but it's still, we're talking like 3 weeks, right?
A month.
A month. Anyone else have different time frames? So the initial, and this is where I go back to the family partners, because they're like, but I don't know that much yet. And I said, right, you've only been working with this family for 3 weeks, but you know something.
So
You'll
ours
learn
is 72
something.
hours.
72 hours. But you learn something in those 72 hours.
We do.
So that's what gets put into it. But like we said from the beginning, this is an evolving document. And what I know about Amy today is a whole lot more than I knew about Amy when she first started at the CSA. So my strength needs culture discovery on Amy, which I have secretly stashed.
As you know, she would never hire me. I have one more. Also, like you guys said, the fact that it's taking the place of the comp and how that information is transcribed into the strength needs. And I have, and for me, it's changing the nature of it. I always, when I was a family partner, explained it as like the layman document. You're going to feel more comfortable. Like this is just to give a snapshot of your family and the growth, etc. The CANS is going to be much more, clinical. And this is kind of, they balance each other out, and it gives us a healthy snap. So now the new document looks a lot more like the CANS, and it's reflecting CANS information and numbers, and is looking more clinical. And
So that's one of those things
that
that
the comp is
wasn't mandated but was strongly encouraged, and we at the home opted not to go with that CANS, Strength Needs Culture Discovery combo form for that reason. It felt like it was going in for us, it wasn't the right direction. But I know that there's some CSAs that are using that combined template. Does everybody know what I'm talking about?
No, what is the new document you're talking
About a year ago, I want to say, Jim Rast from Broom Vandenberg issued a new version of the Strength Needs Culture Discovery document that allowed for CANS scores to be put in the life domains. So you'd go to education and you'd have the CANS scores about education there, and then the cultural perspective on
about? No, we
education.
ruled that out.
It's really confusing, but it's repetitive because it's in the new ICP.
Yeah, that's all three documents.
Doesn't make sense to have that.
Yeah.
So now we're doing a lot of cross comparison and holding them accountable for, and I just feel like while I can see how it makes the tool even stronger in a lot of ways in terms of the use of it on our end, I just feel like it's not family friendly, and I'm struggling with it a little bit, honestly.
The other, I don't want to miss the other concern that you raised, which was around this really personal information that we're privileged to have about a family being put on paper and shared. And what are the ethical considerations that we need to think about with that? Now, is it a document that you will share with team members at a CPT meeting when it has so many really personal stories in it? So how it might impact practice. The two different Strength Needs Culture Discoveries, the one that you share with the team and the one that is just between you and I. Yeah.
And part of that, the personal stories that we found challenging is when the parents tell us very personal stories about their own history and their own families, and they don't want that shared with the team. And it's very relevant to their lives, but
We have struggled with whether to share the Strength Needs Culture Discoveries with team members. And you keep going back to the place that it's really the family's choice.
Yeah.
So it's like Amy said, this is your gift.
Yeah.
Continue to share, I'll continue to grow the gift, but this is what I know about you so far and reviewing it like you guys do so well. And then the family can opt to share that with their team members, they can opt to share it with their kid's babysitter, they can opt to share it with extended family members. It's really theirs to do if they want one.
When we do the Strength Needs Culture, it's basically the family's document. So it's only what they want in there. If we knew any of that, we don't put that in unless they specify. So it's not like we don't need two documents. That kind of information would most likely be in an assessment. But for Strength Needs Culture, it's only what and they know this is going to be handed out at our meetings. And I think by having them sign off also, it's they're okaying, this is what we want to share.
Any other barriers people want to raise yet?
You know, we've been speaking about family partners who typically are the ones responsible for the SCCD, and I know we touched on it earlier today, but I think one barrier which our SCSA has continued to sort of look at is the lack of not having sort of that peer-to-peer model where a more experienced, sort of in the same boat type of young person goes in and says, you know, what are your strengths, what are your needs to that other peer. One thing that we've learned from our youth groups is that, you know, youth speak their own language, and we try to really modify that with what, you know, the best we can, where the family partner goes in and really does some work with the youth separately, or if a care coordinator might be able to sort of link with that youth separately. But I think it would greatly impact the overall, not only the way it was formatted, but also the outcome the SSCD would have if it was more oriented towards that transitional age youth.
So you have asked us to be champions within our respective CSAs when it comes to culture. So some of the discussions that we've had today around the using of this tool and how to get at the information and maybe some of the concerns or barriers, you'll bring back to your CSAs, to decision makers, and really advocate for the things we talked about today.
Yeah, can I just add something? I liked how we did this little mini brainstorming, because I got some really good ideas. And one of the things that I was thinking would be helpful to do with our team is have that done in our team as well, because everyone has a different way of doing things, and then some people get stuck in this way, and everybody can learn from each other. And you know, really, we just need to do whatever works for the family and be as creative and individualized as possible. So I was hoping to